and welcome to this week's episode of the Lunar Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking and discussing and analyzing a Hollywood blockbuster movie called The Truman Show, starring Jim Carrey. So this movie came out like a long time ago. I think in the late '90s. And it's about the star of the show, Jim Carrey, who lives inside a movie studio. So the plot of the movie is that a Hollywood director created this dome, and it's like the world's largest Hollywood studio, and they adopted a baby, and this child from birth was placed in this sort of a studio setting where everything looked real, but everything was fabricated by the director. Even the sky was fake, and the rain was all fake. But Jim Carrey, the character Truman, doesn't know that it's fake. But until later on in the movie, he eventually starts noticing some things that are weird within the scenes of his life, and he starts suspecting, right? So it's a really interesting movie, and it symbolizes, it represents the world that we truly live in, right? The world that we live in here in the real world is a fabricated reality. Now, it's not fabricated in a harmonious, beautiful manner, right? There are sort of forces that move this energy around in a very inharmonious manner. So think of it as listening to a symphonic orchestra, right? That is completely out of tune. Like we all love listening to music that is harmonious, that you hear the main melody, and then the supporting cast of either the pop artist or the orchestra plays in harmony with whatever is leading at the moment, and that is beautiful, and we are enchanted by beautiful musical pieces. However, in real life, the music of our environment is very inharmonious. It's not in tune with one another. It's just very chaotic, right? And that's why we feel that we don't live in a pleasant world, right? So the Truman Show is a really good Hollywood movie that represents the world that we live in. And it's not the only movie that's out there. Another famous movie is The Matrix, right? So that's always like the main movie that is used as an example as to the reality of the life that we live in. So the question is, how do you exit that stage? So at the end of the Truman Show, Truman, he sails across the ocean, and he reaches the end of the ocean, and where he meets the sky, and of course it's fabricated, and then he finds a set of stairs, and he goes up the stairs, and this is where you exit the stage, right? So it's the stage exit. And at that moment, he has a conversation with the creator, the director of that that whole world. And the director tries to convince him that he shouldn't leave because, the real world that he's about to enter is not any different than the fabricated Hollywood world, right? So, but then at the end, spoiler alert, he decides that he wants to live in the real world. No matter how chaotic and inharmonious, he wants to live in reality. He doesn't want to live in a fabricated world. So in our world, in the real world that we live in, we have to find a way to sort of leave that, right? So in this sense, I am the sort of the voice from above, right? Saying, hey, we live in a fabricated world, but there is a way out, right? And this isn't something new, right? If you study a little bit of history, a little bit of mythology, you realize that this narrative has been presented culture after culture going back for the past 3,000 years, presenting a system, a method, which gives us the ability to sort of exit the stage, right? And of course, it's not a place; it's a psychological dimension because there is nowhere to go. There is no like exit door that we can find at the end of the ocean that we can just exit this world and then enter into like a utopia. It that's not a part of this narrative. It is a psychological place. It is a psychological door that we have to enter and go through in order to ascend the world that we live in, right? And live in a higher world. And then, since we don't exit this world, we still operate in this world, but from a higher perspective, from a higher dimension. And we clearly see this in the world of like artists, musicians, what I call stage magicians, right? They are offered the platform of having a stage, and they present their shows, and their shows serve as a portal. It opens a portal in which their fans are able to at least momentarily be transported into a higher world, into a higher dimension, right? Now it's just that artists, musicians, they're not philosophers. So they're not going to present a philosophical treatise as to like, well, this is how to transcend the world that we live in, right? If you want to do that, then you're going to have to study a little bit of, Buddhist philosophy. So in this episode of the Lunar Podcast, I just wanted to comment on this really, interesting movie called The Truman Show, in which depicts exactly the world that we live in. So watching that movie serves as sort of preliminary work, that prepares us for the work of exiting the stage, or in other terms, going through this psychological door, which gives us access to a higher dimension, and by consequence of that, we're able to operate in this world as if we were like creatures from another planet, as perceived by those who are still stuck in the sort of the matrix of this world. I call it spiritual science fiction, right? It's Hollywood, but there's truth to it, right? So I approach it as a spiritual science fiction story.